No problem. All right,
You as well.
let's keep it flowing. Right on to our
Woo!
second guest,
There
a
we
good
go.
friend of yours, a guy you've known for a long, long time. I'll let you introduce him.
Yeah, Kenton Sefcik, registered acupuncturist, lifetime martial artist, just an all-around good, positive dude. And here he is. Can you hear me okay, Kenton?
Fantastic, bro.
Awesome, man. Look, he got the Bruce Lee shirt on. He's representing.
There you go. Looking good, man. How you doing?
100.
Welcome to the show, Kenton.
Thanks so
How,
much for having me. I'm doing well. It's
hey.
good to see both your faces. It's good to see you, John. I can't wait to see you in the gym, both
Man.
gyms, as soon as possible. So,
Absolutely, man. So, for everybody watching, Kenton has trained jiu-jitsu with me, boxing, kickboxing, trains our Windsor club with Chris. He's trained in Calgary and, his traditional martial arts. We'll get into that as well. But, and also works out of my Motive gym as our acupuncturist. We were so lucky to have him come back from Calgary last fall. And, man, it's been fantastic. Like those 2 years when you were gone, we all just kind of fell apart without you, man. we need our
I'm back to
treatments.
put everybody back together.
The magician is back. Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard you called a few names. The magician, the wizard. It's important to have people like that around, buddy.
It is. And he's passionate about it, and he's learning, and he makes things happen. Kenton, let's get into it, man. So,
What's going
Chinese
on?
medicine, you've practiced Kung Fu forever, Tai Chi, did some amateur boxing, you're a blue belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you compete. Get into it, man. Give us some background on yourself. What got you onto this whole Western culture, Chinese medicine, traditional martial arts path, man?
Yeah, man. I was 14 years old. I was living in my parents' basement, as like most of us were at that time. And
Oh, yeah, we were.
it was like 2 a.m. and this commercial came on, and I was born and raised in Calgary, and this commercial came on, and this like elderly white haired guy, he was like beating up ninjas on a bridge. He was getting taken out, but then all of a sudden he came back, and anyways, I just remember it said call Temple Kung Fu at 243-2222, right? And I'm like 14. I was like, I wake up the next morning. I was like, Mom, you got to take me to this Kung Fu school. She's like, you're not going to no Kung Fu school. She's like, you quit piano, you quit soccer, you quit ice skating, you quit everything you try. And I was like, but it's Kung Fu. So I wore my parents down for a little bit, and they took me to this Kung Fu school, and it was probably the best thing they could have ever done, because here we are, start at 14. I'm 40 now, 26 years later. I got a black sash in Wing Chun Kung Fu, then moved to Nova Scotia and got tangled up with Tyson Cave and his trainer Bunny Phillips, and had a couple amateur boxing matches. Opened up twice for Tyson Cave, so that was pretty at Palooka's back in the day when it was on God Engine. Man, that was a spot.
Oh man, that was a spot.
And then
Awesome.
yeah, I've tried all sorts of things, man, like Filipino stick fighting and but getting older, taking shots to the head's not so much fun anymore. So I made the commitment about 2 years ago to get that black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and now that I have my blue belt, I can retire.
And we haven't seen him since.
Yeah, so that's my story, man. So what ended up happening is like I'm 14, do Chinese martial arts. I didn't see the signs, man. Like I was doing other things, and I remember I had a good friend of mine, Dave Rosen. Man, we used to do like punching and horse stance and stuff, and I look over at him and I drop lower, and he'd look at me and he'd drop lower. We would always push each other real hard in class, and I was lamenting to him one day, and I was like, man, I don't know what I want to do. Like, I don't have a career. And he was going into his last year in Chinese medicine college in Calgary, Alberta, and he's like, you're such an idiot. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, you're supposed to go to Chinese medicine college like I did. And I was like, oh, okay. So he's like, go talk to the dean. So I went and talked to the dean, and I was completely blown away. So It was like it's like a 4-year program kind of smushed into 3. I kind of joke we have high school summer, so we only get 2 months off in the summer. So then I had those 3 years. I wrote the licensing exam for Alberta, and then packed her up and moved to Nova Scotia. And so I've been in practice since 2007. So what's that? 13 years.
13 years.
So I practice acupuncture, cupping, moxa, scraping, Chinese herbs, love Tai Chi, Qigong, all that kind of stuff. It's definitely my bag, man. So so that's kind of how I got into it, and it's all Dave's fault, and here we are.
I love it. It's interesting. I've been following you for a while. I actually messaged you
That's right.
before about it. Like for me, like some of your breakdowns are just wild, and for most people, like they're like, what? They have no idea about this kind of stuff, right? So as soon as like you kind of start paying attention to what you do, you're like, oh wow, that's right on the money.
You know, at the end of the day, it's an old way of thinking, and it uses different language to describe health phenomenon. That's it. That'd be no different than like when you want to learn jujitsu, and the instructor's like, "All right, everybody get in your De La Riva position," and you got the white belt going, "I don't know what the heck that is."
Yeah.
They have to learn the language in order to communicate jujitsu. It's the exact same thing with Chinese medicine. You have to learn the language. You have to learn about qi, blood, body fluids, wind, damp, hot, cold, dryness, fire. You got to learn about wood, fire, earth, metal, water. You got to learn about Chinese medicine organs. And then you have to learn what those organs do from a Chinese medicine point of view. And then when a patient comes in, usually what they do is they give me a couple branches, because we're not really humans in a Chinese medicine sense. We're like trees, and we're part of a part of nature, not apart from nature.
Nice.
So by getting some symptoms from a patient, and then I can look at their tongue and I can check their pulse, all I'm doing is I get a few branches on the tree, and then I know the root. So then I can treat branch and root at the same time. And it sounds super foreign, but once you kind of like, again, master the language of the medicine, you can use the medicine. And what's kind of cool is like, I have all the respect. Like I had a couple of hernia operations and different things, tonsils out. They were irritating me when I was young. Like I love Western medicine so much, and I love Eastern medicine so much. So Western medicine zooms in as far as it can go. Hey, there's that little thing right there. We need to take care of it. It's gone. But Chinese medicine zooms out as far as it can go and says, how did that whole body system create that thing? So they complement each other really, really well.
Very, very well said.
Well, speaking of how well said you are, you have your own podcast, The Strength of TCM.
You are well said. Let's talk about John.
You know, I think you're pushing 50 episodes now, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm closing in on 50 episodes of the Strength of TCM. TCM stands for Traditional Chinese Medicine. What was quite interesting is that, unfortunately, there have been some schools, I'll just use that language, in Nova Scotia that were not very good at instructing students. Very monetarily focused, etc. What ended up happening was kind of almost an accident. I had somebody contact me and said, "Hey, I went to school XYZ, and we all got our diploma, and we all are registered acupuncturists, but I don't feel confident in what I went to school for." And my heart just broke. I was like, that's just BS, because I went to a really good school. I wrote a provincial examination. And for those people that are in Canada, BC, Alberta, Quebec, Ontario, Newfoundland all require a licensing exam to practice acupuncture. But the other provinces, Nova Scotia, of course, is one of them. You could have anybody hang a shingle and say they do acupuncture, and it's not going to be illegal. There's nobody to stop them. The only thing that keeps the system in checks and balances is if somebody wants to use their third-party insurance, like Blue Cross, Great West Life, Sun Life, etc. So with all that kind of going on, if you don't have an examination, and you can be pro-exam or anti-exam, but I'm kind of pro-exam for this reason. If you don't have an exam, then the colleges don't have to provide any kind of base knowledge for anybody. They can do anything they want. They just take your money, teach you garbage. So this one gentleman contacted me. He said, "Look, it's not just me. It's like a group of there's like 6 of us. Can we hire you to teach us privately?" And I was like, okay, that sounds wonderful. So we just kind of made up a cash deal. We meet the first Monday of every month, barring a holiday. And I started thinking up okay, so if I had somebody who went to Chinese medicine college, but they didn't have confidence or they had a crappy education, what would I do? So I started creating kind of the quick and dirty acupuncture guide, and I call it the Strength of TCM workbook. So I taught, it was a year-long project. So I taught them for a year, and every month, I would give them 3 to 5 pages, and we would go through the information. I remember the first time I brought them pages, and they all said to me, "This is the first time we've ever seen course material or be given course material." That's how crappy their education was. So at the end of the year, they've got a great education finally, and I have a workbook. And that's what just kind of like spawned. And so I started posting stuff on YouTube and then on Instagram, and I created a Facebook group, and then I started creating a podcast. And I was like, and I remember watching a Gary Vaynerchuk video where this young kid asked Gary, I just wrote a book. How do I sell the book? And Gary's like, you give the book away for free. And the kid was like, what? He's like, no. It's like, you read from the book. And I was like, dang. And I'm like, I can tell people about my workbook. So what I started doing is I record a podcast. I'd read from my workbook plus ad-libbing so it wouldn't be boring. And then I have a podcast guest on the next episode. And I kept doing this. And my workbook actually sells really well. And so that's kind of where the podcast came from. And now I'm working on a 10-hour online course again for these people that are around the world. I'm getting messages from people. This is like so heartwarming. You guys, like, I got a message from somebody who said, I'm in the UK and I have dyslexia. Because we use alphanumeric codes for acupuncture points, it's really confusing for her. So she's like, your podcast got me through school. No word of a lie, like a month later, I had somebody else from the US say that they're dyslexic and that my podcast is getting them through school. So, and then I get messages from Spain and like India and even New York and be like, I'm confused. I went to a really good college. I went to a really crappy college. I'm confused. So it's like, so now that we've got all this time, you know, I'm kind of sitting at home, can't see patients in the clinic, mandatory by the government. I was like, this is the time. So I'm creating this 10-hour course where I can help people from around the world feel more confident in what they went to school for.
Yeah, man. It's great having Kenton around the gym because he's an entrepreneur. He's also always looking for ways to expand upon his business and create media and residual income and help these people that need their help. And, you know, he's always, you know, floating me ideas, and we're fishing each other or sending each other back and forth information now that we're shut down, trying to just support, right? So
trying to stay alive.
Hey, man, that's what it is, right? We're going to bridge this gap, come back stronger. And I mean, we're both doing the same thing. Like, I'm trying to diversify a little bit right now, get through this thing, come out stronger. And you're just creating content and making the best of it, man, being productive. Like, as a creative entrepreneur, it's awesome to see.
Yeah, one of the coolest things that I'm going to wrap it up this Friday, but I created what's called a communication series. So it's 3 webinars, and the first one was how to communicate how acupuncture works to patients. I'm a really big believer in not using the language that is designed for me to communicate with my acupuncture community and give that to the public. Yeah. I believe in trying to translate it into real language. So I had a webinar on that. The next one was basically how to teach patients to communicate to us. So Chinese medicine is somatic medicine. Western medicine is psychology medicine. So when you go to your doctor, you say, I'm having these thoughts. I'm thinking these things. And they go, okay, well, so here's this diagnosis. Chinese medicine, I actually can't do anything with that. I need somebody to say, I'm having heart palpitations. I'm having loose stool. I'm having painful menstruation, hot flashes, night sweating. I'm having a sensation that it's very heavy in my whole body, or my head is heavy. Like, those things are real language. So that was the second one. And then the third one is this Friday, and it's going to be on how to teach or how to communicate to our patients what they can expect from a Chinese medicine treatment. Because I liken acupuncture and Chinese medicine treatment to taking a course of antibiotics. I don't know where people get this in their head that they're going to go for one acupuncture treatment, all of a sudden all their problems go away. It's like, okay, so I'm going to give you one antibiotic, and you're going to go to your doctor and go, that's not fair. How come I'm not getting any better? Not going to happen. So you need. It's
probably because that's what I tell people. I was like, he'll fix you.
Yeah, you're overselling me, bro. We need to undersell and overdeliver. But yeah, so that's what's kind of cool. So yeah, so with my time, I've created this communication series just to kind of help these new graduates feel more comfortable in communication. Just like you guys are doing these amazing, live streams and stuff like that. Just like you both do in your business. I mean, every business is a people business. If you have the inability to communicate what you do without, if you can't do it with passion, if you can't do it in plain language, you're just going to lose people. So the minute I tell somebody that they have liver qi stagnation, the only thing they heard was liver, and then the next time they see their doctor, they're going to Just say, I saw this crazy Chinese medicine guy, and he said there's something wrong with my liver.
I am that guy. I am that guy for sure.
Oh
I think
man.
it's super interesting though. I'm just sitting here taking it all in because I wanted to talk to you for a while, and
Awesome.
I told John before we come on here, I said I'm showing him my goddamn tongue
Yeah.
on the.
Talk about the tongue thing, Kenton, because you
Sure.
post pictures of tongues and it disgusts me, but I know I know
I
what
think
you're
it's
doing,
super
and it's
interesting.
always
So
every time I see him, he looks at my tongue and he knows what's going on, so
that's a
You,
weird introduction. Hey,
yeah, show me your
yeah,
tongue.
it's a good way to get people to shut up when they're talking too much in the clinic. You just say, wait a minute, show me. So the tongue is a small part of the diagnosis, but it's a very important part of the diagnosis. I look for four things: color, coating, cracking, and shape. So a healthy tongue should be slightly pale. If a tongue is red or has red prickles, we diagnose that as heat, again, using naturalistic medicine. So color, so that's coating. So now coating, I'm looking for a thin white coat. That's a normal coating. If a coating is really thick and white, that's dampness. If it's like thick and yellow, that's damp and heat, kind of getting this kind of patterns going on. Okay, I could have other kind of coatings where I've maybe only got a coating on the sides. So I maybe have damp heat in the liver and gallbladder. Maybe have a missing coating. So something that's quite common that people will probably be able to relate to is after they take a course of antibiotics, they will lack a tongue coating, and they'll almost feel like my tongue has been stripped. And so, what's happening is the yin or the fluid or the water of the stomach is being kind of like dried up, and so then it can take the coating right off a tongue. So we have color, coating, cracking. Cracking is almost like the desert. So when water has gone from earthen for quite some time, it'll start cracking. There's different organ positions that reflect on the tongue. And for example, if somebody has a crack on the tip of their tongue, this is called a heart crack, and it can actually mean that someone's heart has been broken, or it can mean that they actually have physical heart damage, but it's likely more the mental emotional kind of part. There's other cracking that can happen. So like you can get cracking throughout, and this is kind of like general fluid deficiency. So color, coating, cracking, and shape. One of the most common cracks, if somebody were to stick their tongue at themselves after this live stream in the mirror, is a centerline crack just in the middle. So again, that's a digestive crack. In the West, we overthink a lot. So
Okay.
again, so like we had a heart crack, which is a broken heart. The
I
crack in the
definitely do.
middle is a thinking like spleen stomach crack. So that's an example. So color, coding, cracking, and then shape. A normal tongue is just, I guess, for lack of a better way to say, kind of like a half oval. A tongue that is swollen, that pushes against the teeth, when the person shows me their tongue, will present with teeth marks. And this has to do with a digestive deficiency. Oftentimes, that patient is putting the wrong fuel in their body. So we often tell patients at that time, listen, just do me a huge favor. It's not rocket science. Stop eating dairy for like 6 weeks. See if your bowels clear up or you don't have such a foggy head. Maybe back off the wheat. Your sugar's really, tough one. Kills the immune system, that sort of thing. So that can tell me some things. Also, what's kind of cool is like a hammerhead shaped tongue. So it's straight, and then as it comes out towards the tip, it comes out. And this is often indicative of like bipolar and stuff, like very serious like mental emotional concerns. So with all that information, I can get a pretty good read on somebody.
wow.
And then of course I also need the patient to tell me. We used to hear all these crazy stories, guys, like, oh yeah, this Chinese medicine practitioner came from China and he checked my pulse in the 6 positions and told me the last time I had sex, or
Yeah,
the last time I ate McDonald's. Charlatan. I don't believe it.
yeah.
They're the tongue, the pulse, what the patient tells me, they're all little snapshots. They're all little branches on a tree, and I'm trying to link them all up. And so yeah, so that's what the tongue tells me. So it's definitely a big part of diagnosis, and it's important part of Chinese medicine.
Yeah,
Man.
I'm mesmerized. It's like,
Yeah,
yeah,
it is really interesting, and I've
yeah.
never heard such, like the in-depth explanation for it. It's kind of comply and know that you read it, but it sounds like a very logical approach with Chinese medicine. Like if it's cracking, it's dry. If it's wet, it's water. If it's, you know.
Yeah. And so we're using those and so what's kind of interesting is like if I ask somebody about their bowel movements, there's only so much information I can get from that diagnosis. Like if somebody's like, listen, I only poop like once a week, which is actually quite common. I find patients and I'm like, whoa, like we need to address that. Like that, if you're having one bowel movement a week, like there's a reason why you're having headaches and acne and like you're irritable and all this kind of stuff. Like we need to get the boat floating. So it's actually Chinese medicine kind of a rhyme. We need to increase the water to float the boat.
Oh yeah, I got it.
Yeah. So, but we can get a little bit of information. But the same thing with the tongue. Like the tongue can give me like, you know, like the color can tell me if somebody has like some heat, or maybe they're cold, or maybe their blood flow is poor. You know, so like, and then coating, they can tell me if they have damp heat, or if they're lacking in fluid. Too much fluid, not enough fluid. And color coding, cracking again, like very, very dry, or like mental emotional, like grief or like something like that. And then shape can again kind of like shape can actually reflect the shape of a human being. So you have somebody who's got a little bit of a bigger frame and they're holding on to too much extra weight, their tongue is likely going to reflect that as well, right? So yeah, so it's kind of cool. It can give me little snapshots.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it really is, man. And we didn't even get the chance to talk about anything about martial arts. And I talked about everything about tongues, but it's blown away for anybody who's out there listening. You know, which there's at least right now. I'm looking. There's 75 of you at home watching this, so all 75 of you watch and make sure you give Kenton a follow. A super knowledgeable guy, but I want to know about your kung fu and your martial arts kind of thing. And yeah, that's kind of what I'm interested. And not just that, but tell us a little bit about your martial arts background.
Yeah, so I started in kung fu, and you know, at the end of the day, we all have to do what kind of feels right here. You know, kung fu can get a totally bad rap, but at the end of the day, it's all about, you know, and like anything, you know, there's reasons why things aren't practical. Sometimes something is actually attribute training and actually has no real applicable, you know, kind of street fight, boxing, MMA, whatever. It just doesn't really have, you know, like but why would you do it? I don't know. Why would you do sit-ups? You know, like so that my core is tight when I take a shot, or I can actually have a fast twitch fiber so that I can do those things. So, so yeah, Kung Fu still remains quite dear to me, the Wing Chun Kung Fu system. You know, we got guys like Tony Ferguson kind of fooling around with some Wing Chun dummy stuff. And then, you know, and then the Wing Chun guys lose their minds and they're like, I saw Bong Sao in his last MMA fight. And I'm like, but yeah, Kung Fu still plays a big part. And one of the reasons I think that Kung Fu plays a big part for me is that there's a huge collection of solo drills. So when I'm working at the clinic and somebody late cancels for an hour, when I'm, you know, in quarantine due to COVID-19 and I'm sitting at home, when I'm like, I can always go to my Kung Fu drills. I can always do something. And what that has done for me is it's created a lot of creativity. So I love like all the martial arts communities, and like, you know, I'm very lucky. I've got, you know, I've got a little bit of some blue mats at home. I've got a small Everlast heavy bag, and I'm able to start thinking using kind of that Kung Fu solo drill brain. And I'm like, what could I do for jiu-jitsu? You know, so that's kind of like why I love Kung Fu so much. There's also kind of like how do I say this? Like a romantic notion in my kind of heart mind about Kung Fu, because I grew up in like, you know, 1990s watching those 1980, 1990 Kung Fu movies. There's always was kind of this a moral kind of high ground. The protagonist, in order to beat the antagonist, usually had to find some like weird drunk dude in the woods to like teach him kung fu, but he would also learn some Taoism and some Buddhism and like how to be a really good person. And that kind of set me off on like, you know, I'm a huge fan of like Taoist thought. I really love the Tao Te Ching and all that kind of stuff, and the Chuang Tzu and the Lao Tzu, the three kind of Taoist Bibles. So yeah, so like that's what is kind of why Kung Fu still remains kind of dear to me. And I see so many commonalities. After, 26 years in the martial arts, I see so many commonalities, like keeping your elbow like close to your ribs, when in Wing Chun. Okay, well, keeping your elbow close to your ribs when you're, boxing, and like keeping your elbow close to your ribs so that you don't give somebody an arm in jiu-jitsu. It's like,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
yeah, so I can keep going back to my kung fu for guidance, I guess. Yeah.
Cool. Interesting. I love that. And I think, John, I know you're a guy, how it's so important to be open. Like I've went through periods in my jiu-jitsu career or career, fuck it, whatever you call it, jiu-jitsu tenure, I guess, where you're like, oh, that martial art wouldn't work or whatever you think, what I mean, oh, that's stupid, but that as you grow in martial arts, you realize that gets sucked out of you because you become a better martial artist, and then you respect different things, and you see other martial arts and how they can be successful and all the good people involved in that particular art, right? It's really interesting. I love it.
Just better understanding of what it really takes.
Oh yeah, it's every martial art has a family and a community, and like there's so many people in jiu-jitsu who are like, oh, it's so badass, and in kung fu I'm sure it's the same thing, or boxing it's the same thing. Everybody thinks their martial arts the badass, right? Because that's why we're all in martial arts, because there's that little tiny ego there, right?
Oh
That's what
man,
brings people to
everybody
martial
wants
art.
to make the right decision.
Yeah.
That's why everybody's truck's the best truck and their car is the best
Yeah,
car and
yeah.
all
I
that sort of
personally
thing.
know that my jujitsu is not the best jujitsu, so I'm well aware and have no bones about it. And my Ford Focus is not the best Ford Focus out there either.
But it is the best car. Um,
Best in my
speak,
driveway.
staying on the martial arts topic, Kenton. Like I know you've worked with a bunch of guys from the gym. Obviously, helped them out with their different injuries from jiu-jitsu or fighting. You've worked with me a ton. And recently, you had a guest on your podcast talking about weight cutting
Yeah.
uh, for fighting, and I can't remember her name. Forgive me, but I listened to the podcast. It was very interesting. She works with high-level athletes and people all across different not just fighting, but I think she worked with like power lifters and models and all kinds of people that worked within weight classes or had to fluctuate their weight for a specific thing. Like, I mean, I know working with athletes and fighters is something you enjoy and you kind of strive to work towards. Like, how important is that as like your ultimate goal? Like, are you leaning heavy into trying to grow in combat sports or sports in general, or are you looking to just kind of? I mean, I know it's an interest of yours. Are you pushing hard to kind of?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm pushing hard. I
Yeah.
appreciate the nod. Her and her business partner, the woman on my podcast, they run Perfecting Athletes, and they have. I'm going to bring his name up again, but they have like Tony Ferguson. They have a bunch of other really high level athletes on their roster, and I find that like super interesting
Mm,
in helping people cut weight or recover from injury or recovering
mm,
from a fight. One of the best things that I had for myself after long hours of sparring and like coming off of a fight in front of like 500 people is my acupuncture, is to give myself acupuncture. Like nothing feels worse than the headache the night after, when
mm,
things really start kind of coming down. Doesn't matter if I won or I lost or was sparring, whatever. But yeah, having acupuncture and Chinese medicine in my corner was really helpful for me, and it's been helpful for like some of the guys that I've been working with, and so it's definitely an interest in mine. But what's really dear to my heart is being a general practitioner. I want to
mm,
treat the fighters and the athletes, and I want to treat the mom who's like has anxiety, and I want to treat hot flashes and night sweating and depression, and I want to treat knee pain. Like I just it. There's so many people that specialize,
mm.
and they really like specializing, and over my 13 years of practice, I realized that I don't like to specialize, because I just want to help everybody, and it really keeps the job interesting day in day out.
No doubt, no
Yeah.
doubt.
Yeah, very.
That's amazing. That podcast was super interesting, and I'd be interested to see over the next few years if acupuncture doesn't grow as a treatment with athletes and become more well known. Like it seems like we kind of blow through these different fads in martial arts, like, oh my god, he just kicked so and so's ass, and all he's eating is fucking cucumber and broccoli. You know what I mean? Or when like
Yeah.
that Edu Portal guy came along and everyone started running along fence posts and shit like that. Like
now everybody's Wim Hof breathing.
hey man, right? Like there's these trends that go through, and I'm not saying acupuncture is a trend, but maybe its
Right.
time's coming. Like maybe that spotlight is just around the corner, right? Like I feel like it
For
could
sure.
jump off at any time. And I'm sorry, I can't remember the woman's name that was on your
Yeah,
podcast.
no, it's all good. Yeah.
But listening to her talk, it was like, like wow, like maybe this is right there, and maybe this is what people are going to start using to take themselves to the next level, and there's a more common treatment.
Have you ever had it, John? I'm sure you've had it, being buddies at Kenton.
The acupuncture?
Yeah, you've had it many.
Oh man, I've seen Kenton probably 100 times.
Yeah, I've only had it probably like 4 or 5 times just in my ears. Back in the day. But yeah, it was amazing to me.
Right on. One of the biggest things I tell everybody is, give that acupuncturist like 2 or 3 treatments worth. I know that's money out the pocket, but if they don't vibe for you, go find another one, because like if we can't write modalities off, we can't write all the physios off and just say, oh, they're crappy, they're just catch bag of tricks, all physios are garbage, all massage therapists are garbage, like osteo's garbage. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't say all car mechanics are garbage. Like I wouldn't take my car to the car mechanic and he screwed up the work that I asked him to do, and then I'm like, all car mechanics are garbage, I'm never taking my car to the car mechanic again.
I'm never taking my car ever again.
Right. Be like asinine, right? So like, there's good mechanics. And there's kind of a funny joke that is probably that we've borrowed for Western medicine. What do you call a bad doctor? You call him doctor.
Doctor, yeah.
So at the end of the day, if there's somebody listening, and you tried acupuncture, but it was with somebody, who maybe did a weekend course in acupuncture or did a 200-hour course, maybe you should go to see somebody who has like a diploma in acupuncture, and maybe you should see somebody who wrote a provincial exam, and maybe even higher than that. Maybe you should find somebody who's got all those things and comes with a bunch of recommendations. Because if I'm looking for a car mechanic, I'm going to ask all 150 people in my circle, like, who's the best car mechanic? So yeah, for sure.
And how many people actually do that? Like that in today's society, that's the problem, right? Because no one does the research, and then they go to Joe Blow, who's known for being a shitty mechanic, and their car breaks down. They're like, first thing they're back on Facebook, go, fucking Joe Blow did a shitty job, blah, 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 blah. But you do your consumer research, right? So you put your own money into a shitty product, you get shitty stuff in return.
100%. Yeah.
The truth, right? So make sure you don't have shitty acupuncture, and make sure you check out Kenton.
100.
That's right.
Yes.
There you go. That's my plug. And
thanks, Chance.
I'm not ballsy enough to do a free tongue exam on the computer, but
come closer to the camera. Seriously.
There you go.
Even more.
Oh, this is creeping.
Do it, Derek.
Let's get it. Let's get it in there.
On,
let's go. I can already see the cracking, actually. And so
I just don't want to know what's wrong with you.
Okay, so one of the biggest things is you're kind of missing a little bit of the coating on the tip of your tongue. Like, it's quite dry overall.
Okay.
And people will often tell me like, well, I didn't drink a lot of water today. No. This is like months, years, etc.
Yeah.
And also a little bit on the side. So maybe some problems falling asleep, maybe some heart palpitations, that sort of stuff. Yeah. Also a little bit of kind of like stress for like over a long period of time, resentment, anger, irritability, that kind of stuff, like brewing for a long time, kind of like eating away at the sides of the tongue, and a little bit of cracking throat. So just kind of overall like dry kind of tongue, right? So,
Jesus
at the end of the day,
this is like spot on.
Man, I can't help laughing.
It's like
I talk to Derek every day. Like, this is hilarious.
This is like getting your
this is killing me right now.
Read on live TV. I'm crying. This is
awesome.
Keep going. Sorry.
Yeah. So like, I mean, some stuff that you can definitely kind of do at the end of the day is definitely drink more water. Maybe a little bit of lemon in the water. That kind of helps kind of with that kind of like liver. That's your Chinese liver. It's interesting because they translated like organs. They're the same. So then when I use the language, you're like, oh no, my liver. And I'm like, no. It's your Chinese liver. It's not your Western liver.
I've had kidney stones like 5 times. right?
Okay.
So I do drink lemon water actually, but I'm currently on pills for fungus on my foot. Just fuck it, we're going all in on Facebook.
Hell yeah.
Not even
We
on
got the
YouTube.
kidney stones and we got the
Jesus Christ.
fungus.
I'm gonna be strutting here soon. But yeah, I got this
Yeah.
on my foot from
Time for your
jiu-jitsu for like the
exam.
Pump
last
the brakes.
Yeah.
for like the last 2 years. I've had just like athlete's foot on one side of my foot, and like if it creams and pills, nothing will take it. So now I'm on this fucking some kind of pill, some kind of fin, and maybe that's what's drying it out too. But
That's probably what's doing it to you, to be honest with you, with all that kind of information now, is that a very common treatment for an infection or fungal would actually, because you have to think like you, us coasters, we know like when it's really like the dog days of summer, right? It's hot.
yeah,
It's like 32 degrees, and then they go, it's 41 degrees today with humidity. And you're like,
Yeah.
and you just like, you go outside and you don't, you feel like you're like actually wading through a pool while you walk down the street. Like that's like damp heat. Okay. And that's like infection, fungus, etc. So like, so how do you get rid of that? Well, you move to Alberta and where it's really, really dry. So that's just kind of like my, kind of like this versus that. So then, yeah, you're going to take a medication. What's it going to do to you? It's going to dry you right out. So that's probably, kind of what's happening. From a Chinese medicine point of view, foods can cause a lot of damp heat. Stress can actually create some of that too. But so, for example, like deep fried fatty foods, ice cream, because it's cold and really, really damp, and then the body's hot, so it can kind of change it a little bit. Milk products, sugar, any kind of like foods sort of like that. And I always have to be very careful because we know in the West that when we talk about food and exercise, they are very emotionally charged topics. So in the clinic, I'm very careful. I'm like, when I'm like, hey, maybe you should like cut back on the dairy product. You'll never make me stop eating cheese. It's like, I love cheese. And I'm like, how much cheese do you eat? They're like, I pop those Babel cheeses all day. And I'm like, this is such a bad scenario. So like, I'm very careful how I tell people things. So
too,
I use kind of like, very general terms, but yeah, stuff that can cause damp heat, dairy, deep fried fatty foods, sticky cloying stuff, those types of foods, sort of thing. So yeah, so
interesting. Okay.
So kind of overall, I'd be like, hey, just like super clean diet. If it's like crackers and cookies and like ice cream and fish sticks and stuff like that, just like just pump the brakes on that for a little bit until that kind of gets cleared up. Keep doing your lemon water. That's fantastic. Outside of that, keep taking your Western meds, right? So man.
I gotta get rid of this damn athlete's foot, man.
Yeah, and I mean topically, tea tree oil is awesome.
Oh, we got acupuncture is hippie bullshit, buddy. He said. Well, I'm sorry.
Is it?
There you go.
I'm sorry you
got
feel,
your first date.
You feel that way.
And welcome to the internet, eh?
And I would absolutely love to stick some needles in you.
Yeah. Well, thanks for following, Nolan. It's that's it, right? Everybody's got a different opinion, and that's the beauty of life right now. But
100%.
I gotta thank you for joining us here, man. My computer's about to die, and I don't want it to die and shut the stream off here. So, everybody, thank you for joining us. Kenton, you got any final words for us, my man?
No.
All right, there you go. All right, that's a lot of work.
He was waiting for that.
That's it. He was spitting the gospel tonight. You did a great job, man.
Thank you.
Again, thank you for joining us. Hopefully, we can get you back on. You should hook up with a girl in Dartmouth. She's been on our podcast before. Nicole, Sport Doc. She lives in the Valley. Doctor Sport. I don't know what her name is in Instagram. Sport Doc Cokes or.
Yeah, that's it.
But she's kind of the same kind of vibe as you, like very positive and into the same things. And between all of us, I think we can make our own Fight League Atlantic Performance Institute. And hey, mind blowing, right? Who knows? Who knows?
Just made my night.
Yeah.
That's it. Who knows what the future can hold? Be acupuncture everywhere, Nolan. Watch out, buddy. All right, folks. Thanks for joining us. That's episode 38. My man Kenton. We'll see you tomorrow night, folks. Kenton, thanks.
Thank you, Kenton.
Thanks,
Good
gents.
to see you and your brother.
All right.
All right, that was great, folks. Kenton, it was a good guess, John. That's
Good
fucking
dude,
super.
man.
That was super embarrassing.
Hey, man, that was pretty awesome. You know,
Yeah, I kept.
and for you doing that, that was cool, man.
I put my tongue on the line for the sake of science, folks.
And entertainment.